Right, welcome everyone to the Dapr community call of July 26th. I'm Marc Duiker, one of the community managers. We have quite a busy schedule today, 3 sessions and a community show and tell. We're going to start with Yaron Schneider about authentication with non-Dapr endpoints, then followed by Deepanshu Agarwal about Dapr workflow with Python. And then we have Artur, Souza about resiliency in Dapr SDKs. So let's start with you, Yaron.
Yeah, sure. So if you're already on the slides, can you move a slide?
Yep.
Yeah, so, okay, yeah, just keeping that slide, thank you. In Dapr 1.11, we've introduced the ability to talk from Dapperized applications to non-Dapperized applications. And what this gives you as a developer is the ability to, of course, enjoy many of the benefits that you get with service invocation, like resiliency, observability, access policies, middleware. And middleware really is a whole world in and as of itself with rate limiting, authentication, OIDC, and all of that, including also service discovery and TLS, and have all of these benefits apply to applications that you don't necessarily control. It might be a service operated by a different team. It can be inside of your cluster. It can be a different cluster altogether that's peered into your cluster. It can just be an HTTP endpoint. But you still want a way to gain many of these benefits and not have to code all of that yourself if you're just talking to something that's non-Dapperized. So this is a really exciting feature, and that, as I said, came with Dapr 1.11. But something that didn't come in Dapr 1.11 was the ability to authenticate to non-Dapperized services. And so today, if you can move another slide. Yeah, there's an animation here. The next slide is not so exciting. It's just gonna, yes. In 1.12, we're introducing TLS authentication for these non-Dapperized endpoints, which is great because that actually allows you to use a root CA, an optional root CA, and then a client certificate and private key when communicating with those non-Dapperized services. So there are a few extra features actually that are supported by the regular service invocation that's not supported for service invocation and non-Dapperized endpoints, but we are working on filling in those gaps. And TLS authentication is a pretty major thing there. And I'm going to show you a quick demo, very quick demo actually, about how this is done. So I'm going to share my screen. Yep, thank you, Mark. Let me know when you can see it.
Yes.
All right, cool. So I have a Go application in this case, pretty simple code. This is my non-Dapperized endpoint, right? This can be any HTTP endpoint. It can be any service in my cluster or even outside of my cluster for that reason. I'm now running this locally on my machine, so I just have this really simple Go web server here that has a TLS configuration, and it requires a client cert, and it also requires verification. So if the client tries to connect to it unsecurely, it will reject the request. And this is really a simple web server. We're listening here on 3333. We have a server cert and server key pair that we're reading, and we're also using CA cert for a pool. So this is an HTTPS TLS secured web server that will deny clients that do not have the required certificates. So I'm just gonna run this here, and I'll do go run.main.go, and I have my Dapperized application, which is actually just going to be curl in this case. So this is what I've just ran is the web server, and I want to connect to it through a Dapperized application. So this code is just running, as a regular Go binary. It doesn't have a sidecar fronting it. It doesn't use Dapr to communicate for requests that are coming from other Dapperized applications. So here I basically just ran this Go web server here. And in the server side, what we do is we expose this HTTP endpoint, and this is what we've introduced in Dapr 1.11. So you have the CRD, which gives you this service discovery. So you can basically go to Dapr and say, hey, Dapr, I want you to invoke this web server, in this case, called my website. And here we pass on the base URL for it, for that service. And what's been added in 1.12 are these type of properties, and we have client TLS here, which basically encapsulates a root CA certificate and private key. Now I'm using self-signed certificates on my local dev machine, and this is how we would basically just put the certificates in plain text, which is obviously something you never want to do if you're deploying to a cluster or any other environment. I'm just doing this because I'm running locally. So we have a root CA here, we have certificate, we have a private key, and this is what it would look like if you're using a secret keyref. So if you know Dapr components today, Dapr components allow you to reference secrets from any secret store. The same is true for the HTTP endpoint. So you have the client TLS property here, and then root CA certificate and private key can also grab those secrets from a secret store of your choosing. And you can basically tell Dapr which secret store to use, because we have the auth secret store property here, and that can be whatever secret store you configure Dapr to work with. So it's the same mechanism as components have, basically. So now that I have this HTTP endpoint here, I can go to a different terminal and just rerun Dapr run. So I'm using the Dapr CLI to launch a sidecar. I don't have an application calling the sidecar. It's just going to be a curl command. So running the Dapr sidecar here with Dapr run, app ID is caller. That's the identifier for this application. And I'm giving it the path of this components folder, which contains the HTTP endpoint. And I'm just giving it a port, an HTTP port to talk to for 3500. So I'm going to run this. And now, as the application, I can curl my local Dapr instance, and I'm calling Dapr over that port that I configured, and I'm doing /invoke, and I'm telling it, hey, invoke my website, which is this external HTTP endpoint, and I'm calling the hello method. So we can kick this off and see hello HTTPS. And if we go back here, just to remind everyone, people who maybe just joined, we have this web server listening with these root CA server cert and server key and requiring client authentication. So yeah, we're basically working on bridging the gap between regular service invocation and non-Dapr service invocation. And if you have any more features that you think could be useful for your use case to talk to non-Daprized endpoints, we'd love to hear that. Discord, GitHub are all right places to put those features asks in. So I'm going to stop sharing now. Back to you, Mark.
Excellent. Thank you, Yaron. Which also reminds me, August 1st, Duiker is hosting a webinar with Kendall and Alice. No, with Kendall and Sam, I think, also about these non-Dapr endpoints and also some additional 111 features. More of that in the community show and tell. Any questions or comments about this before we move on?
Yeah, this is Bhupesh here. Actually, I do have a question about the observability. How when the call happen across the non-Dapr API, actually, it will still show as part of the observability, right?
Yes, great question. So in terms of observability, we're really talking about two things here. One is tracing and the other is metrics. So in terms of metrics, you will get all of the regular service invocation metrics that you've come to know and expect from regular service invocation, things like request, throughput, latency, error rates, all of that stuff that'll show on the calling Dapr sidecar. And in terms of tracing, you will be able to see a node edge connection between your sidecar and a remote endpoint. And Dapr will also send the trace ID via header to the remote endpoint, right? So for example, if you have a service that is non-Daprized and you're writing your tracing, yourself from that service because it's non-Daprized, Dapr will actually send the trace span so that you can take it, write it to the same tracing backend so that you can view the trace end to end.
Thank you.
Excellent. I suggest we move on to the next session. Deepanshu, shall I share the slides or do you want to do it yourself?
Hey, hi, Mark. Yeah, I think you're referring to me. Yes, I can share mine.
All right, go ahead.
Yep, thanks, Mark. Okay, I hope my screen is visible now.
Almost. Yes, there it is.
Okay, 1 second. Okay, hello everyone. Hello everyone. So I think we already had in few last community calls some talks about Dapr workflows, as we had already introduced Dapr workflows in Dapr 1.10 with the support in .NET SDK for authoring of the workflows. So I won't take much time in covering what is workflow, but in a single line, what I understand is like a business flow, to a way to define a business flow or data flow that can basically orchestrate across multiple microservices, and yeah, it is stateful and has got a seamless integration with other building blocks of Dapr, pub/sub, bindings, etc. What's new in 1.11 in workflows? Okay, so here we have got Python SDK support as well for workflow authoring and management APIs, the pause, restart, purge functionalities via management APIs. We have got the ability to wait for an external event, like we will also see in our demo. Let's say you want some human interaction in some form, so it will need some external event. So an event can be raised, and there can be something which is waiting for this external event, and accordingly the next set of processes can happen. Some other functionalities were also introduced, like ability to support multiple workflow apps in a single cluster. This was a breaking change, and some others. Okay, so I will move to the demo part, not taking much time. So here we have it. Basically, this order processing workflow basically mimics with the same order processing workflow that we had in .NET SDK, with maybe some minor tweaks. So here we have the order received, and we will check whether there is sufficient inventory available to process ahead with this order. If not, we will outrightly reject the order. If yes, then we will now see if the payment is more than 50,000. You can assume any currency, USD, INR, or whatever. So just for the demo purpose, I have not put any currency here. Is payment more than 50,000? So here we will seek manager approval if it is more than 50,000. If no, then we will simply go ahead with processing of payment, and we will update the inventory with the minus the order, because we had sufficient inventory. So here, if the manager approval is required, then we will seek that, and if he approves within time, then we will go ahead with the process payment. And yep. So let's move to our VS Code and see. Okay, so here I have this app.py, wherein I have defined a workflow run. I have got my workflow runtime instance, and I am registering my workflow, which is order processing workflow, which I have defined along with some other activities, which we had seen a bit about them here. So these, you can think of direct correlation to an activity, like verify inventory activity. So this will be this one. Request approval activity. So this will be this one. So all these are my activities along with my workflow, which I have defined here. I will not go much into the business logic of these. I have just done some dummy thing, like for the processing of payment, I'm just sleeping for 7 seconds. So just some dummy code here. So app.py, this is the important stuff where we can register our workflow. We can register our activities here, and again some cosmetic code to basically demonstrate that okay, I'm collecting the order through console, etc., etc. Main thing would be this one, wherein we schedule this workflow now, the order processing workflow, with a particular input that we had collected via the console, and then we can wait for workflow completion here. Quickly moving to the demo then. Okay, so this terminal, wherein I will start my Dapr sidecar. I will give an app ID, gRPC port, etc., and a components path. So I will start this Dapr sidecar. Here, this is my Python app that we had just seen. I will start it. Okay, so we have got few items which we can order. Paperclip, cars, 15,000. So okay, let's spend some money today. We will directly order cars. So let's order cars, and for 15,000 for every car is worth here. What we have done for the demo is 15,000. So if we order more than 3 cars, it should seek a manager approval. Let's order 20 cars here. Okay, so requesting approval for payment of. Okay, now it requires this particular instance of workflow. It requires approval, waiting for manager approval. Let me go to my postman and try to see the state of this one. This is when so this is now can be seen in the running status. And yeah, this is a workflow. I will go here. This mimics basically the raise event part through management API. So instead of code, I basically am mimicking that manager is approving. So let's reject it for this instance. Let's give something else than false, true. Okay, payment for order has been rejected. And yep, I will go to my postman for a second and let's try to see what is the status here. It is completed, but the processed is false. So basically it is completed, but the processing did not happen actually, the proper processing. Okay, now let's again order, but let's try to reduce the order quantity so that the manager can approve. We have now given an order of 10 cards. Okay, so it has gone to seek the permission. Okay, we will give this instance permission, approval true. Okay, so it has been approved. Processing payment. It will take some dummy seconds. Yep. Updating inventory. And yeah, it is completed. I will exit from it. And one last thing I just want to show. I hope it will work properly. The Zipkin part. Running of my query. And yeah, here I have. So these activities can be tracked here in the Zipkin. These are traceable. Yep. Yep. I think that's mainly from my side for the Python. So yep. Most welcome to go through the workflow docs and yep, try to author some workflows in either .NET or Python. Yep. Yeah, that's it from my side.
Thank you, Deepanshu. That's a nice a nice demo. I like it. Any questions or comments about the authoring of workflows in Python?
Yeah, hello, this is Tom Fanera. Yeah, great demo there. Could you show us in your code where you're actually using what the wait for external event and then the raise event part?
Yeah, sure.
So you're doing all this within one application, one app ID, right?
Sorry?
You're doing all of this in one application, or do you have?
Yes.
Okay.
I have for demo purpose. I have taken one application.
Right. Okay.
Yeah. So let me go to the waiting part. Okay. So here, this is my workflow. These were my activities. In this workflow, I have got, first of all, we verify, when receive the order, we verify the inventory. If it is not successful, then we notify that it cannot be processed. Then we check what is the total cost. If it is more than $50,000, then we wait for external event here.
I see. Okay. Manager approval. Yeah.
Yeah. We also have a timeout here through when any. So if you have one task which needs to finish reach the timeline, so you will use when any. If you have a couple of tasks, then all the tasks need to finish. So you will use when all to move ahead. So here I have used when any because I wanted, okay, if the manager does not approve within 5 minutes, so I will move ahead. And will say that payment for order has been cancelled due to timeout. So here we were able to do approve it within time. So accordingly we move ahead. And here I could have done this raise event here itself, but I just wanted to showcase that yes, I can do it via management API. So that's why I use this one. And this raise event has got, let me show you, should be open. I should have this open. And this raise event is this one. You have to post. This is workflow component name, which is Dapr in our case. The instance ID that you must have seen me copying and pasting over there. The event name is the event on which we are waiting the manager approval, which I have given in the Postman, this one, and then I can send a data with it.
Yeah, I understand that all external event and raise event have to be done within the same app ID. In other words, you can't raise the event in a completely different application, but you could just create an API proxy. So a real external application could just say, could pub sub back to an API in the main app, and then just call raise event in the main app by just doing a pub sub back or a service invocation back to the workflow application, right?
I'm just trying to understand what you're saying. So are you saying that for raise, this raise workflow event, if we can use some pub sub wherein when the event has arrived, then we can trigger this raise workflow event on those lines, are you saying?
Yeah, like if you had another app that the manager is approved, let's say the manager has a different app, it's a web app, and he approves it on, and then there's business logic in his app that finishes, and then when it's done, it sends a REST, either a service invocation back or a pub sub for resiliency, sends it back to the workflow app, but you cannot actually call the Dapr raise event for the workflow app outside of the workflow app. You've got to call that inside the app, correct?
Inside the app, so the manager app is different, and what I understand is if we use this workflow instance ID, so irrespective of which app you are calling, provide this raise event, correct?
I'm
Because
not sure.
Yeah, we had a discussion on Discord that you could only raise the event within the same app ID where you're waiting the external event. You can't call it from outside the workflow app. I mean, you can call it, but you have to call it through like a proxy, you just have to send an API request and say, raise event, and then send it a message payload with the the event, the result and the event ID and the instance ID, and then a handler inside the workflow app would take care of raising the event, thus allowing the workflow to continue or do whatever it wants to do, right?
The app ID that you've got highlighted there is sorry, the workflow ID that you've got highlighted there is scoped to the app. So if you're in a different app, you try and raise an event to that ID, it won't resolve, I think. So,
yeah, that's what I'm trying to. That's exactly what I'm trying to say.
What I'm saying is you have to write an API wrapper around the raise event APIs, which is a little bit inconvenient. It's a little bit boilerplatey, but it's kind of the way to do it right now.
Yeah.
Until
you mean some proxy?
A proxy, exactly. Yeah. And you could send a pub sub back where you would get the exploits of the resiliency, because you've got a somewhat of a tenuous connection between the external app and the workflow app, and you want to make that a resilient, durable, callback to the workflow app, right?
Okay, I will try that out with different apps. And in the meantime, can you raise this issue? Can you raise this issue on GitHub?
Yeah, I can do it on GitHub. I mean, we did it in Discord. We went through this on Discord.
Okay.
As well.
So that would help. Yeah, that would help basically to reproduce exactly the same way you are visualizing it, and then probably we can go ahead with some solutioning for it if it is really an issue. I believe the way you are saying it is an issue.
I think it's an issue? Yeah. It's fundamentally in the design of how workflows are scoped. Chris knows all about it.
Yeah, he does. Yeah, I know Chris knows about it. Yeah. Thanks, guys.
Sure, but yeah. Anyways, this raising of an issue will help, and so that would help.
Yeah, I'll go.
Probably,
I'll put it in
yeah.
today.
Yeah,
Yeah,
definitely do that.
that would really
because if it doesn't matter if it's like an issue or a feature request, it's good to capture these very specific scenarios. So thank you, Tom, for raising this. Perfect.
And then we can definitely take it out with some solution. We should be able to. Yep. Thank you.
Okay. Thanks again, Deepanshu.
Thank you.
Artur, are you ready for your Resiliency and Dapr SDKs?
Yes. Let me share my screen because I don't have many slides, so I can just share everything. Okay. So I'm assuming you can see my screen.
Yes.
Yep. Okay, let me just move this off of the way. Okay, good. So today we have resiliency. Let me do a slideshow. Today we have resiliency policy runtime, which means that is a communication between the Dapr sidecar and cloud services, or your local database if you're doing a local development. But that's basically because you're running the sidecar locally with the app, and now the service you're talking to at the database is usually remote, either in a separate machine or in a separate data center or in the cloud, right? So that can be connectivity problems or some throttling because of your service agreement with the cloud provider. So the resilience policy allows you to have retry, timeout. The retry is you can configure the retry policy too, and also has circuit breaking. And that's like the basics for the Dapr sidecar to resiliently talk to the services. And that allows your application to have resiliency with zero code change. So that is really nice because most of the time before Dapr, applications have to implement their own retries or use some kind of poly framework in case of .NET to write their own resiliency in the code. So again, one more example of how Dapr takes off the boilerplate code into the sidecar and allows your app to focus more on business logic. Now, because we have Ambient, Dapr Ambient as a sandbox project, that will enable Dapr sidecar to be shared across apps, and maybe even have the Dapr API to be remote. So now you have problems where the connectivity between the app and the sidecar is not as guaranteed as it was before. So in order to address that, we have a proposal that's going through voting now. It's almost approved, and then there is an implementation in Java that shows how a Java application with zero code changes again can have resiliency between the app and the sidecar, and that works in addition to the resilient policy to the cloud service. So these are two separate things. And then I'm going to show a demo of it working. And I'm going to show, wait a minute, I'm going to click on the link. Let me go back to the link here. So if you are curious about it, you can look at the proposals repo, number 33. And then we're going to show in this demo, basically, we're going to see today is how you can set these two environment variables. The Dapr API max retries and Dapr API timeout seconds. So one of the things that is different between the SDK resiliency and the runtime resiliency is that SDK resiliency is simplified. We don't expect developers to compose a complex YAML fine-tuning the resiliency, the retries configurations or anything like that. The SDKs will be opinionated about it. So is an opinion is driven by convention and not by configuration in this case. We still give each SDK some room to decide on how to configure resiliency for retries and timeouts, but this should be the consistent environment variables for the applications. So let me go through a quick demo. I'm gonna use Java in this example, like I mentioned. Is this readable?
Maybe zoom in one more.
Okay, let me go to view. Wait. View. Where was that? Appearance. No. I was doing that before.
What about good old Command Plus?
There you go. Yeah, this one is different. Okay, there you go. Increase font size. Okay, is it better now?
Yeah.
Okay. So this application is relatively simple. What it does is it has a state store, and you sleep for a second, and it writes the timestamp to the timestamp key on the state store, and you keep doing that forever until it's interrupted. So it basically very simple as that. So I'm gonna run this by first of all running the Dapr sidecar. So let me open the my script here. 1 minute. I have everything handed. Okay, so let me. It's like the demo gods are not with me today. Let me open the. Okay, let me see if I can find it with the latest commands. So is it in this? Oh, there you go. It's in this screen. Okay. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to do Dapr run. And this will basically just run Dapr, and it doesn't have any particular configuration. In this case, we're going to run proxy server. Okay. So toxic proxy, if you are not aware of, basically can intercept a TCP connection and allow you to configure a bad connection. So this toxic proxy, and now I'm gonna initiate a forwarding. In this case, wait 1 minute. There you go. I'm gonna create an endpoint where port 50,002 you're gonna forward to 50,001. So it's just a forwarding. Now I'm gonna run the application by connecting to the gRPC port 50,002, which means it's just a way to connect to the sidecar. There's going through toxic proxy, and toxic proxy not doing anything. So we're gonna do this now, and there's no timeout configuration, just running the vanilla version. And as you can see, it's working. Okay. So the first thing I'm gonna do is I will add a latency. Sorry, add a timeout to the connection. And now if you go to the result, you can see it hangs forever. Okay. So today, if there is any like hanging on the server side or a connection problem, your client will have this behavior, will be there until you get a response for the server. So that is not acceptable. So we are gonna kill that, and we're gonna run now with timeout. Okay. So we're gonna run the same process, but now using the timeout feature. So if you wait a little bit longer, there you go. Now you get a deadline exceeded error instead of hanging forever. So next, I'm gonna remove the timeout configuration. There you go. And if I go back here, it goes back to working again. Okay. So now we show how the timeout feature is important for the client side timeout is important on the SDKs. Now I'm going to show the retry, what it's going to do. So instead, now I'm going to add jitter to it, which basically going to kind of randomly create some delays. And then you're going to see most of the calls failing. So if I go back now, it's going to hang. There you go. Deadline exceeded. 5 seconds. Now it succeeded because again, jitter is kind of random. It doesn't have the deterministic part of it, which is on purpose here. So let's see how many more are gonna pass. So 5, one of them failed. Let's see another one. It's gonna be timeout again. So we basically make a single request and timeout at 5 seconds. One more. I'm gonna let it run a little bit more so we can see the difference of what happens once I add retry. Okay, so we can see the degradation of service. Another one passed, and now let's see again. We're gonna have a timeout again. Okay, so I'm gonna abort at this point, and I'm gonna make the same run, but now have a max retries of 3. So basically, each retry, each call gonna have a timeout of 5, but you're gonna retry 3 times, and that will increase the number of requests that succeed. So let's see that happening. Okay, the first one already passed. It's slower because it might take up to 15 seconds, right? Because it's or maybe a little bit more, because we are trying up to 3 times. Four with the first one. Let's give you a few more seconds. See how it's going to go. That one got a deadline exceeded. Now this one passed. Let's see a few more seconds. To see the demo gods are with me today. Okay, there was a timeout. So we are, for my tests, it goes into a roughly 50% success rate with the retries, with this degradation of 30-second jitter, which is pretty pretty intensive. Okay, let's see if we're gonna do more retries. It requires a patience exercise here. So in the meantime, I'll let this run, but the goal here is to, based on seems that I'm getting more errors than supposed to, but this one passed. But the goal here is that the retries should be able to give you a higher success rate, depending on the connection quality you're having behind the scenes. In this example, we should be getting close to 50% success rate, and then it takes a while for you to run this for a longer period of time to see the difference, especially with this intensive type of jitter. But yeah, so this is the proposal. I'm adding this into the Java SDK, and also documentation explaining what are the conditions for retry. So that is it on my end. Thank you very much. I'm going to stop sharing.
Thanks, Artur. Are there any questions or comments about this topic or the demo? You were all staring so intensely to your console.
Yeah, I think this is great. Certainly going to improve the overall reliability of Dapr and their calling applications.
And the only thing that's required are like the 2 environment variables, right?
Yes, that is right. That's going to be for the after the proposal is approved. That's going to be the consistency across SDKs. Is going to be the environment variables. We're also going to enable the timeout and retry setting to be set per Dapr client instance. So you can hard code that in your code if you prefer. That's a totally decision from the developer if you don't want to be configuration based or hard coded, and also allow that to be overwritten per request. So you can say, oh, every time I'm making this call to this particular database for this particular key, I know I have to retry less or retry more, you know, so we can cover more cases instead of one catch all. But depends on the scenario, a simple environment pair of environment variables should be enough.
Thanks for this clarification. Makes sense. All right. Okay, let's continue with the community show and tell, which I'll be doing.
Hey, Mark, before we continue, and I think we have a bit of time, I want to show my screen again to show Bhupesh what the observability looks like, actually.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
Yeah. So Bhupesh, if you're still here, and I think you are.
Yeah.
Actually, I don't think he is he? No, he's not. He literally just dropped, I think. So I'm going to show everyone else what observability looks like with non-Dapr applications, but he can watch it later on the video. Let me show my screen because one browser is worth 1,000 words, right?
Exactly.
So I just opened Zipkin. I showed the demo earlier about how I use Dapr sidecar to talk to a non-Dapr service. So this is just Zipkin I have running on my local machine. And if we go ahead and look at dependencies, this is really cool because it shows the caller. The caller is the ID of the Dapr sidecar that I gave it earlier. And we can see that it's sending a request to my website, where my website here is a non-Dapr application. So I can just go in here and I can see the calls, and I can also find the traces here. Find the trace. Why isn't this working? Let me refresh this. Yeah, I think I don't have any calls, so let me just look up a request. Well, that was more than a couple. Yeah, and now we have traces, so you can see all of the traces just as you would expect from in-cluster service location. You can see them going on here. You can see the duration, the method, the caller, everything that you'd expect from tracing perspective. And also you can see the server address, right? So the name of the HTTP endpoint was my website. On the tag for the span, it'll show up as this. And yeah, you get the status code, the protocol, and everything else. So this is the tracing aspect of it. And if I go here, this is the metric server for my Dapr sidecar. We can see that in terms of metrics, we see everything that we see from regular service invocation. So this shows the round trip latency, for example. You can see the app ID, which is a caller, the path that is called, the status. And if I go here, we can also see the latency that we're getting from the target endpoint, which is server. You can see the full path here, the method, and the status code. So yes, all of the observability that we get from regular service invocation is also included in service invocation for non-Dapr applications.
Excellent. Thanks for showing this. All right.
Oh, Bhupesh is here.
Yeah, answering in the chat. Yeah, perfect.
Okay.
All right, sharing my screen again. All right, let me also show the chat. All right, so a quick round of what the community has been up to for the last 2 weeks. First, a whole range of blog posts. Xavier Gering wrote about syncing events from Event Hub to Cause to Be with Dapr. Then Arka Pravashnia wrote about building microservices with Dapr and .NET Part 1. I always like blog posts that end with Part 1. I expect to show a lot of more blog posts in the near future. Then there's ensuring seamless operations, troubleshooting, and resolving Dapr certificate expiry by Anna Cosma. Then I wrote a post on the news tag about Dapr create applications faster with standardized APIs. And finally, there is a blog post called Tuning a Dapr-based message-oriented microservice solution in Azure Kubernetes for high throughput. I don't know the actual name of this person, but their handle is the Weekend Blogger. All right, so those are the blog posts. Then some social messages. I have done some live streams like 2 weeks ago with 2 people in the Azure MVP community, one about observability and one more like a general intro into Dapr. Then my colleague Mauricio was host or was guest on a podcast from GoTo, and talked about how to build and deploy services and to a Kubernetes cluster. So definitely have a listen to that podcast. I released the Dapr 111 release highlights video on the Dapr YouTube earlier last week. So if you don't know what the highlights are, you can have a look at this video. Then April Edwards, Senior Developer Advocate at GitHub, posted this on LinkedIn. It contains a lot of things about the CI/CD, but also about Dapr. So the Dapr specific link is gh.io/learn-Dapr, and that will point to a YouTube playlist that contains 3 videos about Dapr, what is Dapr, and running Dapr on AKS, and running it on Azure Container Apps. Then was a video on a channel called AI Max. Again, I don't know the actual name of this person, but it was mostly about Azure Container Apps, but a large part of this video was also about an introduction to Dapr. As you mentioned earlier in this call, Dygrid will host a webinar about the Dapr Service Invocation API, and also some 1.11 updates will be done by Kendall and Sam. It's for, the date is not on here, but it's the 1st of August. So definitely register for this webinar. And finally, there was a shout out on LinkedIn from Mohammed Reza Barahi about the Dapr workflow, which is actually nice to see like a reference to one of the other community calls, because it's good to know that it gets more exposure than just being in sync here. It's nice to see these things shared. So if you're on this call, or maybe you're watching this on YouTube, definitely join the Dapr Discords. If you have questions there about Dapr, lots of people there to help you. And if you want to help out others, that's also very valuable. But please also use the show and tell channel. If you write some news yourself, or maybe you spot an article or a nice post about Dapr, please put it in there. That will also make my life easier collecting all this information. Final part before we have like a Q&A is that I want to point out there is a state of Dapr survey that Dygrid has initiated. So we would like to ask all of you to go to this URL, dygrid.ws/state-of-Dapr. And it's about, I haven't filled it in myself yet. I still need to do that. It takes about 10 minutes of your time, but if you're using Dapr or you're considering using Dapr, definitely fill this in, and the results will be shared with the entire community. Are there any questions or comments about any of these sessions for today? No? If not, well, thank you to all the speakers. Good sessions again. Thanks for all your time, and hopefully see you on Discord. Until the next call, everyone. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.